It was one of those nights you never forget, the kind that feels like pure magic. The moment I walked through that door and heard everyone yell surprise, my heart just about burst. Balloons everywhere, fairy lights strung across the ceiling, my favorite people smiling back at me. And right there in the middle was Ryan, holding this gorgeous cake with my name written in gold. I felt so overwhelmed with love, so grateful, thinking, wow, how did I get this lucky? The room buzzed with laughter, hugs, and the kind of joy that wraps around you like a warm blanket. Honestly, it felt like I was living inside a perfect little moment. And then, Ryan introduced me to her. "Emma, this is Vanessa," he said, with that charming smile of his. "She's a friend of ours." I didn't think twice about it. I just smiled, reached out my hand, and welcomed her in like I would with anyone Ryan cared about. And honestly, she seemed lovely. We clicked right away, chatting about the food, laughing over some silly story, even snapping a few photos together like we'd known each other for years. Looking back now, it's wild how none of it felt off, not even for a second. And let me tell you, Vanessa? Oh, she was good, sweet, thoughtful. The kind of woman who notices your dress, refills your wine, and says all the right things to make you feel seen. By the end of the night, I actually caught myself thinking, what a wonderful person. I hope we stay in touch. I had absolutely no clue, none, that the woman smiling next to me, the one hugging me in those photos, wasn't just some guest. She was the woman my husband had been sleeping with behind my back. And she stood there, right in the middle of my birthday. You know what's crazy? Thinking back, there were no red flags. None. Ryan was the perfect husband that night, refilling my glass, checking if I was having fun, whispering how beautiful I looked every chance he got. And Vanessa? Right there in the mix. Laughing with my friends, complimenting my decorations, acting like she genuinely belonged in my life. There wasn't a single crack in their performance. Not one. If anything, I walked around that party feeling like the luckiest woman alive, completely oblivious to the fact that the biggest lie of my life was unfolding right under my nose. At one point, I remember standing there, looking around the room, thinking, wow, I'm so blessed. Everyone I loved was right there. My family, my friends, the man I trusted more than anyone, and her. And that's what haunts me the most when I look back. She wasn't just some stranger lurking in the background. No. She was front and center. She hugged me. She smiled at me. She looked me in the eyes, while knowing exactly what she was doing. And Ryan? He stood by, cool as ever, pretending to be the perfect husband, like this was just another happy chapter in our marriage. I even remember this one moment so clearly. We were taking a group photo. Ryan had his arm around me, and Vanessa was right there on my other side, smiling like she was part of the family. I didn't think twice about it. If anything, I felt grateful that Ryan had friends like her, kind, sweet, thoughtful. God, the irony, the sheer cruelty of it. Standing there, posing for pictures with the two people who were betraying me in ways I couldn't even begin to imagine. Smiling, completely clueless. I remember sitting there later that night, watching Ryan give this sweet little toast. He talked about love, about partnership, about how grateful he was to share his life with me. People clapped. Some even wiped away a tear, and there I was, soaking it all in, believing every single word that came out of his mouth. I looked at him thinking, God, I am so lucky to have a man like this. Meanwhile, sitting just a few feet away was the woman who knew the truth, who knew that every word he was saying was a lie. If you asked me then, I would have told you that night was perfect. I felt loved, celebrated, cherished. surrounded by people who cared about me, or so I thought. There was no doubt in my mind that Ryan was a good man, a loyal husband, the person I had built my life with. And Vanessa? Oh, she was just the sweet friend who somehow made the night even more special. Someone I was actually looking forward to getting to know better. Can you believe that? I welcomed her into my heart, into my home, into my life. But here's the part that still makes my stomach turn. They didn't just betray me. They did it boldly, fearlessly. They stood there, side by side, smiling in my photos, toasting to my life, hugging me like nothing was wrong, like I was the fool at my own party. And the worst part? I had no idea, no clue that the woman shaking my hand was the same woman who had been sharing my husband's bed. Not a clue that this beautiful night, this perfect little celebration, was nothing more than a stage, a show, a beautiful lie. For a few days after the party, I was still floating on that high. You know, that feeling you get when life feels right. I kept scrolling through the photos and videos, smiling at the memories, sending little thank you messages to everyone. And then, something caught my eye. A video one of my friends had taken, just a candid little clip of everyone mingling, laughing. But in the background, there they were, Ryan and Vanessa. And suddenly, something just didn't sit right. I paused the video, watched it again. There was this moment, so small that most people wouldn't even notice, where Ryan brushed her arm. Not accidentally. No. It was subtle, but it lingered. And then, the way they looked at each other. It wasn't friendly, it wasn't casual. It was familiar. Way too familiar. My stomach tightened. My brain tried to rationalize it. Stop it. You're overthinking. Don't be that wife. Don't be paranoid. But once you see something, you can't unsee it. I told myself to shake it off. Maybe it was just nothing. But deep down, this tiny seed of doubt had been planted, and as much as I wanted to ignore it, I couldn't. I felt it gnawing at me, this little whisper in the back of my mind saying, something isn't right. And I swear, once you start questioning one thing, suddenly, everything starts to feel like a clue, a puzzle you didn't even know you were supposed to be solving. A couple of days later, I was doing something completely ordinary, cleaning the house. You know, folding laundry, picking up jackets that Ryan always left hanging on the back of chairs. Same routine as always. And that's when it happened. I grabbed his jacket, and something slipped out of the pocket. A crumpled little piece of paper, harmless at first glance. But when I unfolded it, my heart practically stopped. It was a receipt from a hotel, dated 2 days before my birthday. At first, my brain couldn't even process it. I just stared at it, reading the address over and over. The hotel wasn't even far. In fact, it was right near the same venue where we had the party. My hands started shaking. I kept telling myself, no, this has to be a mistake. There's got to be some explanation. Business? Maybe a surprise planning thing for the party? But even as I said those things to myself, my gut was already screaming the truth I didn't want to hear. I stood there, gripping that tiny piece of paper like it was a ticking bomb. My ears were ringing, my mouth went dry, and suddenly, the whole house felt different, like the walls were closing in. I could barely breathe. This wasn't just a receipt. This was confirmation. Proof that something was happening right under my nose. That little whisper of doubt. Oh, it was no longer whispering. It was screaming. Something was wrong. Horribly, horribly wrong. I paced the living room, clutching that receipt like my life depended on it. My mind was racing, flipping between denial and this sickening realization that maybe, just maybe, The man I trusted with everything wasn't who I thought he was. I kept asking myself, could I really be that blind? Am I losing my mind? Or is there something right in front of me that I've been refusing to see? My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I sat down, staring at that stupid little slip of paper, trying to connect the dots. The hotel, the timing, the way Ryan had been different lately, a little more distant, a little too eager to be helpful, like he was compensating for something. And then my mind went straight back to that video, to that touch, to that glance. Suddenly, it wasn't just a weird coincidence. It was a pattern, a truth that had been quietly living in plain sight, waiting for me to finally open my eyes. I wanted to believe I was wrong. God, I wanted to believe it more than anything. But something inside me shifted in that moment. Something cold, something sharp. I just knew, that this was only the tip of the iceberg. That if I had the courage to pull this thread, everything, and I mean everything, was about to unravel. I wasn't sure what I'd find. But I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't ignore this anymore. That night, after Ryan went to bed, I couldn't sleep. My hands were shaking, my chest was tight, and my mind kept racing in circles. I kept thinking, am I really about to do this? Am I really the kind of woman who checks her husband's phone? But you know what? At that point, I didn't care. I needed answers. I deserved answers. So when I heard the water running from his shower the next morning, I did it. I grabbed his phone, unlocked it, and for the first time in our entire marriage, I went looking for the truth. And there it was, plain as day. Right there in front of me. Message after message. Texts that made my stomach twist into knots. Flirty, playful, intimate. Him and Vanessa. Miss you already. Last night was incredible. Can't wait to see you again. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely scroll. I felt like the floor disappeared under me, like I was free-falling into this cold, suffocating void I couldn't climb out of. My entire marriage, my whole life, it shattered in an instant. But you know what hit me even harder than the messages themselves? It was realizing that while I was blowing out birthday candles, making wishes surrounded by family and friends, she was right there, standing next to me, smiling at me, hugging me, pretending to be my friend, while knowing damn well that she was sleeping with my husband. The humiliation, the betrayal, it wasn't just private, it was public. It happened in front of everyone, and I had no idea. I can't even describe the wave of emotions that hit me. It was like grief and rage collided all at once. One second I was sobbing so hard I couldn't breathe. The next, my tears dried up and this fire started building inside me. A fire I didn't even know I was capable of. I kept hearing this voice in my head screaming, how could they? How could he bring her into my birthday, into my home, into my life, like this? The sheer cruelty of it. The audacity. I kept scrolling, hands shaking, reading more, photos, plans, little inside jokes, proof that this wasn't some random mistake. This wasn't some fling that happened once and then faded away. No, this was deliberate, ongoing. And the worst part? They were comfortable. Comfortable enough to flirt while I was right there. Comfortable enough to laugh behind my back. To pretend to be part of my life while stabbing me right in the heart. I felt sick. Physically sick. And then something shifted. The pain started turning into something else, something sharper, something colder. No, I whispered. No. You don't get to do this to me. Not like this. If they were bold enough to parade this affair in front of me, bold enough to smile in my face while tearing apart my marriage. Then, I was going to be just as bold. I was done being the fool in my own story. Done sitting quietly while they laughed behind closed doors. No. This wasn't going to end the way they thought. I sat there staring at his phone, gripping it like it was the last piece of my sanity holding me together. My hands were numb, my chest felt like it was being crushed. But beneath all that, something was crystal clear. I wasn't going to let this destroy me. Not like this. Not quietly. If you two thought you could humiliate me, at my own birthday, in front of everyone I love, well, you have no idea who you've been messing with. I whispered those words like a promise. A vow. It's wild how betrayal can flip a switch inside you. One moment you're the loving wife, trusting, devoted, believing in the life you built together. And the next, you become someone you don't even recognize. Someone colder, sharper, stronger. The version of yourself that only shows up when survival becomes non-negotiable. And in that moment, survival meant one thing: revenge. Not the petty kind, not the impulsive, reckless kind. No, I was going to do this right. I wiped my tears, took a deep breath. And as painful as it was, I started thinking clearly, clearer than I had in weeks, maybe even years. If you were bold enough to bring this into my birthday, to put her in my photos, in my memories, then I'll be bold enough to make sure everyone knows exactly who you are and what you've done. I stood up, clutching that phone like a weapon. And right then, a plan started forming in my mind, a plan they'd never see coming. I knew I couldn't just confront him in private. No. That would be too easy for him, too easy for both of them. They needed to feel this the way I felt it. Public, humiliating, undeniable. So with a smile that probably looked far more convincing than it should have, I told Ryan I wanted to host a little dinner. Just to thank everyone who made my birthday so special. Oh, and of course, Vanessa had to come too. Naturally, after all. She was such a dear friend. The look on Ryan's face, completely unsuspecting, clueless. He even seemed proud of me. Like, wow, what a thoughtful wife I have. I watched him as he helped me plan it, texting friends, making reservations, suggesting the guest list. Every time he smiled at me, every time he kissed my cheek, I wanted to laugh at how utterly blind he was to what was coming. And Vanessa? Oh, she replied to the invitation like butter wouldn't melt in her mouth. Of course, I wouldn't miss it for the world. In the days leading up to that dinner, I felt this strange calm wash over me. Like the storm had already passed. Like something inside me snapped and was never going back to the way it was. I wasn't the same woman who smiled at her birthday party thinking her life was perfect. No. That version of me, she was gone. Now, I was someone else. Someone sharper, colder, focused. And as the night approached, all I could think was, you two wanted to turn my birthday into a joke. Well, let's see how you enjoy being the punchline. The night of the dinner arrived, and I swear, you'd think it was any other happy little gathering. Everyone showed up smiling, chatting, completely unaware of the storm that was about to hit. Ryan walked in like the king of the castle, charming, confident, holding my hand like the devoted husband he pretended to be. And Vanessa? Oh, she walked in like she owned the room. Hair perfectly done, that fake little smile plastered on her face, like butter wouldn't melt in her mouth. I greeted everyone, hugged them, made small talk. And the entire time, my heart was pounding. Not from nerves, from adrenaline, from power. Because for the first time in weeks, maybe months, I held the cards. Every word I spoke, every glance I threw their way, was calculated. controlled. I watched Ryan laugh. I watched Vanessa sip her wine, pretending to be just another friend. And I thought to myself, keep smiling, sweetheart. Drink it in, because you have no idea what's coming. When dinner was finally served, I stood up, tapped my glass, and smiled as everyone turned to look at me. I just wanted to say a few words, I began, and oh, you could have heard a pin drop. I started soft, sweet, talking about love, trust, gratitude. About how lucky I was to be surrounded by such wonderful friends and family. I watched Ryan relax, smiling proudly at me. I saw Vanessa nodding, sipping her wine, completely at ease. And that's when I felt it. That electric, almost delicious moment. The one right before everything comes crashing down. And then I shifted. My smile didn't fade. It just sharpened. And speaking of gratitude, there's someone very special I'd like to thank tonight. I turned, locking eyes with her. Vanessa. Vanessa, thank you. Not just for being here tonight, but for all the quality time you've spent, entertaining my husband when I wasn't around. The silence was instant, suffocating. You could literally feel the air being sucked out of the room. Ryan's face? Oh, it was like watching a man get hit by a freight train. His jaw dropped. His eyes darted around the table like he was searching for an escape hatch that didn't exist. Vanessa? Pale? Frozen? Her hand still gripping her wine glass mid-sip, like if she stayed perfectly still, maybe, just maybe, she'd disappear. But no. There was no disappearing tonight. Not for them. And just when they probably thought, she's bluffing. There's no way. I pulled out my phone, unlocked it, and started reading. Out loud. Message after message. Texts that left no room for doubt. No wiggle room. No explanations. The flirty jokes. The late-night meetups. The photos. The receipts, figuratively and literally. The gasps. The shocked whispers. The looks exchanged around that table. Oh, they were everything. Because at that moment, the truth wasn't just out. It was undeniable. And there was no going back. I didn't stay to watch the aftermath. I didn't need to. I stood there long enough to let it sink in. Long enough to see Ryan's face go ghost white. Long enough to watch Vanessa crumble into a stuttering mess. And then I grabbed my purse, straightened my shoulders, and walked out of that restaurant with my head held higher than it had ever been. Their chaos, their shame, their panic. Not my problem. Not anymore. The moment I stepped outside, it felt like I could finally breathe again. For the first time in a long, long time, the weight wasn't on me. It was on them. And as much as it hurt, God did it hurt, something else started to settle in. This overwhelming sense of freedom, of clarity, of knowing that I wasn't the fool anymore. I wasn't the woman sitting in the dark, wondering what was real and what was a lie. No. I knew the truth now, and the truth had set me free. The next morning, I didn't hesitate. No second guesses, no tears. I filed for divorce, blocked them both on everything. Social media, gone. Phone numbers, deleted. Emails, straight to spam. But you know what I didn't delete? The truth. Oh no, I made sure everyone knew it. Friends, family. Anyone who might have heard his version of things before he had the chance to spin it? No, he wasn't going to rewrite this story. I was. And you know what surprised me the most? The way people showed up for me. Friends I hadn't spoken to in months started reaching out, checking in, offering support, saying things like, I always knew something felt off about him. My phone didn't stop buzzing. Messages, calls, people telling me how proud they were, how brave I was. how they couldn't believe the audacity, but also how they admired the way I handled it. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel broken. I felt powerful. Even people I barely knew started whispering about it. Neighbors, acquaintances, people who had been at that dinner, and even some who had just heard about what happened. Did you hear what Emma did? She caught him cheating and exposed him right there, in front of everyone. Oh, the story spread like wildfire. And honestly, I wasn't ashamed of a single second of it. Why should I be? I didn't break anything. I didn't lie. I didn't betray anyone. That was their mess. I just made sure everyone could see it clearly. And Ryan? Oh, he tried. Of course he did. Tried texting me, calling me, leaving these pathetic voicemails filled with half-baked apologies and desperate excuses. It didn't mean anything. I made a mistake. We can fix this. As if. As if you can set fire to someone's life and then act shocked when there's nothing left to save? No. Not this time. Not me. I was done playing the role of the forgiving, understanding wife. That woman? She didn't exist anymore. I swear. There's this moment after the storm where you just breathe, where the silence isn't scary anymore. It's peaceful, liberating. I remember standing in front of my mirror a few days later, just staring at myself, really looking. Not at the broken woman I thought I'd see, but at someone stronger. Someone who survived something designed to shatter her. Someone who refused to let it. I smiled. Not the same smile from before. A different one. One that said, "I'm still standing, and you didn't win." I whispered to my reflection. They showed up to my party thinking they could humiliate me, thinking they could laugh behind my back, but look who's laughing now. And honestly, I meant every word. Because yes, the betrayal hurt. It broke pieces of me I didn't even know could break. But it also woke something up inside me. Something fierce. Something that refuses to ever be small again. They thought they'd crushed me. What they actually did was set me free. And as I walked away from it all, from him, from her, from that entire mess, I realized something that will stay with me for the rest of my life. Sometimes the worst thing someone does to you becomes the best thing that ever happened to you. Because now, I'm not just walking away. I'm walking away, winning, with my head high, with my heart intact, and with the last word. And trust me, the last laugh is mine.
My name is Jenny Rhodes, and I'm 29 years old. For the longest time, I thought my marriage was something other people would envy. Stable, dependable, almost unshakable. I wasn't naive enough to call it perfect, but in a world where so many people struggled just to stay afloat, I thought we were steady, solid, safe. I had a career that paid the bills on time. I cooked dinners at least a few nights a week. I tried to be present when my husband Daniel wanted to talk about his day. We had been married for 4 years, together for nearly 6, and I wore the title of loyal wife like a badge of honor. I never looked twice at anyone else. I made compromises when he asked. Once, I even turned down a job offer in another city so he could finish his training program here. At the time, he had squeezed my hand and told me I was the rock he could lean on. And I believed him. I believed that being someone's rock was a compliment. But over the years, that word, dependable, started to shift in tone. It no longer sounded like gratitude. It began to feel like an insult. It showed in the small things. If I suggested a weekend trip, he would sigh and say, "That sounds fine, but you're not exactly the adventurous type." When I bought tickets to a local play, he would roll his eyes and mutter, "You know I like upscale things more than that." He even began to take little jabs at my career. I'm not a CEO, but I make good money, and I've always been proud of the fact that we've never once had to stress over bills. Yet he would smirk and say things like, "You're lucky you don't care about ambition the way I do. Must be nice being satisfied with average." I told myself it was stress. I told myself it was exhaustion. I wanted to believe he still respected me, but his words began to feel like pinpricks on my skin, tiny, almost invisible wounds that still stung. And then there were the nights he glued himself to his phone. I'd walk into the room, and he'd tilt the screen away with a too casual, "Just TikTok, relax." But something in his posture, in the way his eyes flickered, told me it wasn't TikTok. The space between us grew wider, even when we were inches apart. Conversations shortened into fragments. Laughter became rare. Our silences stretched, cold and heavy, like a wall neither of us wanted to admit existed. One night, I tried to bridge that distance. I came home with his favorite takeout and a bottle of wine. I thought maybe we could eat, maybe watch something together like we used to. My heart ached for something simple, something familiar. He barely looked up from his phone. "I already ate with a friend after work." I forced a smile, even as my chest tightened. "Oh, maybe later then." "Maybe," he muttered, his thumb still scrolling. That night, lying next to him in bed, I stared at the ceiling and wondered when I had become invisible in my own marriage. The ceiling fan hummed above me, steady and indifferent, while he turned onto his side, the glow of his phone reflecting across his face. I thought about all the compromises I had made, the nights I stayed up late waiting for him, the opportunities I had set aside, the ways I had convinced myself that loyalty was enough to keep us whole. But deep down, a whisper began to form, quiet but relentless. What if you're not enough for him? What if you were never enough? And though I tried to silence it, I had no idea that whisper was about to become a roar. It was a Thursday evening when everything finally snapped. Daniel sat at the kitchen counter, his laptop open, fingers flying across the keys. I stood in the doorway for several minutes watching him. His face was tense, his brow furrowed in concentration, as though I were invisible. I cleared my throat softly. "Daniel, can we talk?" He didn't even glance up. "Not this again, Jenny. I'm busy." My hands tightened around the edge of the counter. "This isn't about nagging. I swallowed the lump in my throat. I feel like I'm losing you. I don't know what's happening between us anymore." Finally, he stopped typing, but instead of meeting me with concern, he groaned and rubbed his forehead like I was a burden. "God, Jenny, you always overthink everything. Can't you just let it be?" The words stung, but I pressed on. "No, not this time. I'm serious, Daniel. You barely talk to me anymore. You're always on your phone. You don't even look at me when I walk into a room. What happened? Did I do something? Did I miss something?" For a moment, I thought he would brush me off again. But then he laughed. Not the kind of laugh that warms a room. Not even the kind that hides nervousness. No, this was sharp, dismissive. The kind that cut straight to the bone. "You really don't get it, do you?" I blinked, my chest tightened. "Get what?" He slammed the laptop shut and looked at me with a smirk I'll never forget. A smirk that said he was superior, that I was naive. "You're basically my practice wife." The air left my lungs. For a heartbeat, I thought I had misheard. "What did you just say?" His voice didn't waver. "Practice. That's all this is. I'll know what I want when I find better. You're good, safe, dependable, but you're not it. You're what people settle for when they're figuring things out." My whole body went cold. The room tilted. Practice. The word echoed in my skull, bouncing around until it hollowed me out from the inside. I wanted to scream, to throw the wine bottle sitting on the counter, to demand how he could say that after everything I had given up for him. But I didn't. Instead, I just stood there, frozen. My jaw clenched so hard I thought it might crack. My stomach sank like a stone. Silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. Daniel rolled his eyes, as if my stillness bored him. He reopened his laptop and began typing again, dismissing me entirely. As though the words he had just spoken weren't a knife through my chest, but a casual comment, something to toss aside and forget. But I couldn't forget. I knew in that moment that something in me had broken, not in a loud, fiery way people imagine when a marriage ends. No plates shattered, no voices rose. It was quieter than that. It was the kind of breaking that comes with clarity. He had just told me exactly who he was, and I would be a fool to pretend I hadn't heard it. That night, I lay beside him in bed. He scrolled through his phone, the glow reflecting on his face, his fingers tapping lazily at the screen. I stared at the ceiling. My eyes burned, but no tears fell. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the word again. Practice. It wasn't just cruel, it was the truth leaking out. The kind of truth you only reveal when you've already convinced yourself of it. By morning, I knew what I had to do. The morning after Daniel called me his practice wife, something inside me had shifted. I didn't explode. I didn't beg him to take it back. I simply moved forward. While he showered, I sat at the kitchen table with my phone and called a lawyer I knew through a mutual friend. By lunch, I already had an appointment scheduled. Walking into that law office felt surreal, like stepping into a parallel version of my own life. The attorney slid papers across the desk, explaining details in a calm voice while my hands trembled faintly against the polished wood. Divorce. I signed where I needed to, my pen scratching against the paper like thunder in the quiet office. My chest was tight, but beneath it there was something else, something I hadn't felt in months. Clarity. That night, I drove home with the papers folded neatly in a folder on the passenger seat. I didn't cry. I didn't even listen to music. The silence itself felt like an answer. When I walked into the house, Daniel was on the couch, scrolling his phone again, a smirk tugging at his lips. He didn't even look up. I held the papers against my chest, feeling the weight of them. Then, slowly, I set them down on the kitchen counter. "What's this?" he asked, frowning as he flipped the folder open. I met his eyes, steady. "Divorce papers." His head snapped up. "You're kidding." "No," my voice didn't shake. "I'm not." He laughed, a sharp, nervous sound. "You can't be serious. Over one argument? Over something I said when I was frustrated?" I crossed my arms, grounding myself. "You didn't call me your practice wife by accident, Daniel. You meant it." His face faltered, just for a moment. Then he scoffed, leaning back. I was angry. People say things they don't mean. "No," I countered softly. "People say things they'd never admit otherwise when they're angry. And you admitted everything." He pushed up from his couch, his posture bristling with false confidence. "You're being dramatic. Every couple fights. You think throwing away a marriage over one slip-up is reasonable?" I stared at him, silence stretching like glass between us. Finally, I said, "Couples fight, but couples don't call each other disposable placeholders. You showed me exactly how little I mean to you. I won't stay and wait for you to find better." His jaw tightened. "So that's it? You're just giving up?" I almost laughed at the irony. "No, Daniel, you gave up. I'm just listening." His voice rose, sharper now. "You're just doing this to punish me. You want me to beg? Is that it? You think this is teaching me some lesson?" I shook my head, calm. "I don't want to punish you. I want to move on." He slammed his hand against the counter, the sound cracking through the room. "Unbelievable. After everything I've done for this marriage, you're walking away like it's nothing." My eyes flicked to the papers between us. "You said it yourself. To you, this marriage is nothing. Practice. So let's stop pretending." For the first time since I'd known him, Daniel didn't have a quick comeback. His mouth opened, then closed again. His eyes flickered with something I couldn't name. Fear, maybe, or regret. I didn't wait to find out. I picked up my jacket, slung it over my shoulder, and walked toward the door. Behind me, his voice cracked. "You're making a mistake." I paused in the doorway, turned back once, and said, "No, Daniel. For the first time in years, I'm not." And then I left. That week blurred into a series of logistics, meetings with the lawyer, splitting accounts, canceling the joint credit card. I moved into a small rental, the kind of place that was quiet enough to let me breathe. Daniel barely responded at first, almost like he didn't believe I'd actually go through with it. He didn't even sign the papers right away. Instead, he sent random texts. "We need to talk. This is stupid. Just come home and we'll figure it out." I didn't answer. The silence between us grew louder than any words. And strangely, for the first time in years, I felt calm. The first morning in my rental apartment, I woke up to silence. No passive-aggressive sighs. No glow of a phone screen illuminating the other side of the bed. Just quiet. I brewed coffee in a small pot that sputtered and hissed, filling the air with a rich aroma. For the first time in a long time, I realized how much I had missed the sound of my own breath without tension pressing against it. Life was simple, stripped down to essentials, but it was mine. Daniel, however, seemed to sprint in the opposite direction. Within days, his social media exploded. Rooftop bars, expensive restaurants, dinners with a woman whose face never fully appeared in the frame, though her manicured hand and glittering jewelry gave her away. A friend of mine, Melissa, texted me one night, "Have you seen his Instagram lately?" I hadn't. I unfollowed him the day I filed, but curiosity tugged at me. I opened his profile and scrolled. There he was, grinning with a champagne glass in hand. New clothes, new watch, new woman. He hadn't posted a picture of me in months, but suddenly he was documenting everything. It should have hurt. It didn't. If anything, it confirmed what I already knew. I had been nothing more than a placeholder. A convenient warm-up round while he searched for something shinier. So I stopped looking. Instead, I turned inward. I picked up running again, lacing my shoes and pounding the pavement until the night air filled my lungs. I reconnected with friends I had let drift during my marriage. I signed up for evening pottery classes, the cool clay grounding me in a way I hadn't expected. Piece by piece, I was stitching myself back together. And then, a few months later, Melissa called me, her voice bubbling with disbelief. "Jenny, you're not going to believe this." I was halfway through cooking dinner. "What now?" "That woman Daniel's been parading around." Turns out she was already engaged. He was just her side project. Apparently she dumped him at some bar last weekend, threw a drink in his face, screamed at him in front of everyone. I froze with the wooden spoon in my hand. Engaged? Yep. All this time he was bragging about her, and she was never his to begin with. It's poetic, honestly. Poetic, predictable. I leaned against the counter, absorbing it. But strangely, I didn't gloat. I didn't text him. Didn't feel the urge to rub salt in the wound. All I felt was relief, because for once, this wasn't my mess anymore. The shift was obvious. Almost overnight, Daniel's highlight reel dried up. No more rooftop dinners, no more champagne selfies. Instead, his stories became vague quotes about betrayal and heartbreak. Some people aren't who they pretend to be. Never trust someone who says you're the only one. The same friends who used to defend him began to change their tune. "He's kind of unbearable lately," one admitted. Like, he thought he upgraded, and now he's just bitter. I kept my mouth shut, sipping my tea, feeling an almost serene detachment. Because for the first time, his downfall wasn't tethered to me. It was his own, and I was free. It started with a text. "Hey, stranger, how are you?" I stared at the screen, thumb hovering. Then I set the phone face down on the table. No reply. A day later, "I miss you. Can we talk?" Silence. Then came the longer messages. Excuses disguised as apologies. I was stressed. I didn't mean what I said. You know me better than that. I deleted them without finishing. But Daniel was relentless. When silence didn't work, he shifted tactics. He called. His voice on voicemail was shaky, almost pleading. "You're really going to throw away everything we had? You're supposed to fight for us, Jenny. That's what marriage means. Not just running when things get hard." For a moment, his words tugged at the strings of memory. Once I would have believed them. Once I would have carried the weight of saving us, no matter how little he respected me. But not anymore. The more I ignored him, the more desperate he became. "I know you miss me. Don't lie to yourself. After everything I sacrificed for you, this is how you treat me? You're cold, Jenny. Heartless. No wonder I wanted more." I read them once, then deleted them. Each word was less about me and more about him unraveling. When guilt trips failed, he tried another angle. Mutual friends. Melissa texted me, "Hey, Daniel asked me to talk to you. He says he regrets everything. Maybe give him a chance?" I sent back, "Appreciate it, but no, don't get involved." Another friend messaged, "He won't stop talking about you. It's kind of sad." I ignored that one completely. And then came the knock. It was a Saturday afternoon when pounding rattled my apartment door. My stomach dropped, already knowing. I opened it to find Daniel standing there, eyes red and puffy, mascara-like smudges of exhaustion under his eyes. He looked nothing like the polished man flaunting rooftop bars on Instagram. "Can we talk?" he asked, voice cracking. I stepped outside, pulling the door half closed behind me. The air between us was thick with desperation. "There's nothing left to talk about." Tears spilled down his cheeks. "Please, Jenny, I messed up. I didn't mean what I said. I was scared. I was stupid. You're not practice. You're—" I held up a hand, cutting him off. My voice was steady. "Stop." His face crumpled, desperation twisting into bitterness. "So you're really just going to throw me away like garbage after everything we've been through?" I met his gaze without flinching. "I'm not throwing you away. You did that the moment you decided I was temporary." His tone hardened, his tears evaporating into sharpness. "So that's it? You think you're better than me now? You think some other guy's going to magically fall into your lap?" I shook my head. "This isn't about anyone else. It's about me choosing peace over being treated like a backup plan." He opened his mouth, anger sparking, but I had already turned to go inside. His voice cracked as he shouted after me, "You'll regret this!" But even as the words echoed down the hallway, I knew I never would. Months passed. Seasons shifted. My life settled into something steady, something simple, something mine. I didn't expect to see Daniel again, not really. But fate has a strange sense of humor. It was at a mutual friend's wedding. The hall glittered with string lights, music thumping as laughter spilled across the dance floor. I was mid-conversation with Melissa when I felt the weight of someone's gaze. I turned, and there he was. Daniel. He looked smaller somehow, His once polished charm had dulled. His shoulders slumped, and for the first time he wasn't surrounded by admirers. He was alone, sitting at a table, scrolling his phone like a man desperate for distraction. When his eyes met mine, he froze. Then, quickly, he stood, straightening his jacket as though he could piece himself back together in a heartbeat. He plastered on a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Hey." His voice was soft, almost like nothing had ever happened. "You look good." I nodded politely. "Thanks." He shifted, fidgeting with the edge of his cuff. "Can we talk? Just for a minute." I sighed, but followed him toward the edge of the room, away from the crowd. The music dimmed in the distance, leaving us in a bubble of silence. He took a shaky breath. I wanted to say I'm sorry, for everything. I was stupid. I thought I wanted more, but all I found was people who didn't care about me. You were the only one who ever actually loved me." His words hung between us, heavy. I studied him, noticing the lines on his face, the hollowness in his eyes. Finally, I spoke. "Daniel, you told me I was practice. Practice is something you throw away when you're done with it. That's how you saw me, and once you said it out loud, there was no going back." His eyes brimmed with tears, but I didn't mean it. "Yes, you did." My voice was calm, steady. "Maybe not in the exact words, but you meant it enough to let it slip, and it showed me exactly where I stood with you. I believed you then. I believe you now." He shook his head desperately. "But I've changed. I get it now. Please, Jenny, just give me another chance." A quiet laugh escaped me. Not cruel, just final. "Another chance to be someone's warm-up round?" "No, Daniel, I'm not practice anymore." His face twisted, shifting from pleading to furious. "You're cold, heartless. You'll never find someone who puts up with you the way I did." I smiled faintly. "Good. I don't want someone who just puts up with me. I want someone who values me. And that person sure as hell isn't you." For a second, I thought he might lash out. Instead, he turned sharply on his heel and stormed out of the hall, his footsteps echoing. I exhaled slowly, the weight of years lifting from my shoulders. I walked back to my table, ordered another drink, and watched the bride and groom laugh together on the dance floor. And for the first time in a long time, I felt completely free. Thank you for listening to my story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done if someone called you practice?